All right, so today we're going to talk about chapter, whatever, 10, uh, entitled Prodigals. So, musically, the whole like delay, that it kind of starts out with something I wrote years and years ago, something I always wanted to do something with. And so having this sort of breakdowny, sort of like not really a chug, but rhythm riff kind of behind it or in front of it, however you want to think of that, was, you know, yeah, I had fun recording it and thought it sounded cool, you know. Um, but yeah, like it really, this song started out with that, like intro riff, just wanting to do something with that because I've always, you know, since I like came up with that riff years and years ago, I was like, this would be cool to, you know, do something with. But so let's talk about like the literal meaning of what's going on in this song, and it's simple enough. Revolution, viva la revolution, right? Um, yeah, he's still in the city and everything, and think kind of back when I wrote it, and I like to think of it less this way now, but if I'm going to be honest with myself, yeah, he kind of incites revolution somehow. Um, yeah, revolution. Um, I tend to think of it more that he's kind of a spectator of the revolution. But I think, yeah, back when I initially wrote this, it was he kind of incited it or like encouraged it at the very least, but quickly kind of stood back and was like, hey, what's really going on here? And instead of becoming like an active participator, he became an observer. Um, so pretty much this like proletariat kind of revolution happens in the city. Um, there's a military slash police force that comes up, and there are blows. Um, and once again, yeah, I wrote this way before the social unrest of the last 2 years, really, before George Floyd, and before the whole march on the Capitol. Um, so it has nothing to do with any of that at all. It's not a reaction or anything because I literally wrote this like 4 years or whatever before any of that happened. Um, but like, so like the very title, Prodigals, obvious, reference to like the parable of the prodigal son. Um, it starts out saying if prodigals along a watchtower magazine, the ammunition would have emptied into the firing line. So, I mean, what's that talking about? Well, they're like facing off against this like police force that could shoot them all like that. And then it says Big Brother would oversee with an everclear chalice, praising the heavens for our blood, kissing at his signet. Um, so Big Brother means it's a reference to two things. Um, being that it's a song called Prodigals, it's a reference to the big brother in the parable of the prodigal son. Because that parable essentially has three characters in it: the father, who's, waiting for his younger son to return, who's squandered his wealth and ate pig slop and stuff like that. But more importantly, in my opinion, and oftentimes the important part of the parable that sort of gets overlooked is the big brother, the pissed off brother who finds out that, oh, they're throwing a big ass party for my little brother, but I've been here the whole time. I haven't asked for anything. I've always wanted to have a party, and the tragedy of it is the father saying to him, basically all you had to do was ask. Everything that I have is already yours. But like, I guess the big brother, even though he's coming from the opposite perspective, um, he doesn't know who he is. Much the same way that the younger brother doesn't really know who he is, his identity either. They're just opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's still the same thing at play, is that they're both in their own ways broken. Um, so the big brother is reference to that, but it's also reference to George Orwell's 1984, um, which, Big Brother is basically surveillance state. Um, does the Big Brother in 1984 actually exist, like one single dude or whatever? The implication is no, it's kind of fictitious. It's a scare tactic. In this, there is a big brother. He's basically the like mayor of the president, whatever, of the city, and he's overlooking this basically from his home, from like a big office building, and the like riot, revolution, whatever you want to call it, is basically happening in a park, like right across the street from his house. Like, for instance, in the artwork, I basically used as a reference um, for it a downtown park in Greensboro. It's like Center City Park. And like across the street from the park is this like huge, fairly huge, I guess. Um, I guess it's like 20, 21 stories, somewhere in there. Building that is like, I guess, condos or whatever. I've heard that the like very top floor is basically you've got to have $1 million to buy that like penthouse suite. Um, so I mean, it's fairly like expensive to live there downtown. Um, and so that was kind of like the image that obviously I used in the artwork, but also like in my head, like dealing with the lyrics and all, it's just like the president, mayor, governor, whatever you want to call him. He's like hanging out on his balcony, just like with a chalice in his hand of just like straight Everclear liquor, just drinking it and laughing his ass off because he's like, these people are dying and I'm still here. I'm safe. I'm still in charge. Um, but in the city square, the gallows prepare for hangings while inhabitants ignite torches and gendarme, I think that's how that word is said, riot gear. And so, yeah, inhabitants, plural or whatever, but one side you've got, like the proletariat with torches, and then the gendarme, like basically like the police force or whatever, um, they're in riot gear, riot shields, all that sort of stuff. So it basically, I ask, if this city state devolves into violence, can it be called home? Was it for freedom that you were set free when your big brother had an eye to see? If you'd eat pig scraps again, if muttering curses when stumping your damned hoof. So, uh, once again, blending both like Orwellian literature and then, uh, the parable of the prodigal son. Um, because like straight up, prodigal son's probably my favorite parable. It's a simple enough parable to understand, but like if you actually look at it, there's a lot going on in that story, and it's kind of sad. Um, Looking at the Big Brother, like I've already said, but then George Orwell's 1984 is like pretty much my all-time favorite English literary novel. Like just the way he writes it, the language, like it's just a masterpiece. And what I always tell people when it comes to that book is that, like, at the very beginning, Orwell sort of like gives the implication, like, by the end of this, you're gonna love Big Brother. And both like you as the reader and like the main protagonist in there is, like, hell no, like, screw Big Brother. And then, like, through, you know, just irony and through the series of events, by the end of the novel, Orwell does exactly what he said he would do. The protagonist ends up loving the Big Brother, and you're just like, I sat there when I got to the very end, just kind of horrified. Like, not because, like, oh, I thought Big Brother was right or anything like that. This surveillance state and just dystopia and totalitarianism in general. But just the fact that, like, he wrote that story is like almost like a prophetic warning to us. Like, it's just a genius book, and I wanted to do it service in this song. Um, so one of the things that I think signifies like a change in the protagonist in this story, like his change of heart and all, is he makes the statement, me singing, we wanted to be the saviors of mankind with the nostalgia of becoming kingdom celebrities. What that means is realizing, like, and part of this being like when I wrote this is that, yeah, have this kind of like messiah complex of like wanting to save people, make things right, um, and have this kind of like become a celebrity or like an important person, so to speak, within the kingdom of God, of, like being somebody well respected and all. But like it says, like I sing in it, but many good deeds will pass by forgotten, unremembered with absence of passing memory. So like, yeah, you can spend your life trying to do the right thing and trying to set people free, but many of those good deeds aren't going to be remembered anyway. Um, what's good? What good's paying homage and atonement if Big Brother says it must be eternal? So, like, back to the problem of suffering. Um, you try to do what's good, but the powers of be make you suffer anyway, because there's like a certain kind of sadism with that, I suppose. Um, how long must the gentry fear the show of force? They're facing off against like a police or military force again before their country can be the home of the brave. Um, so, I mean, that's obviously referring to, the United States in some ways of, you know, does the power really lay with the people, or is there a big brother that you know we just have to fear the Leviathan, and in reference to like Thomas Hobbes, um, of just where you have to fear this supreme source that you call the state. um, and the end of the song, I basically scream, "Others beat plowshares," is an image that I think I come with a few times in this album, of just like that. I can't remember where it is exactly, but the scriptural reference of beating swords into plowshares. Um, Others beat plowshares and call it a home for the free. Um, Yet home's where the heart is, not an Art Deco cross stitch. If home is somewhere else, then let me reject the city to journey outside its walls to discover the heart of God. Um, and where this song ends is him coming to the conclusion that this city kind of sucks. Um, it isn't the utopia, like we already know it isn't a utopia, but like spiritually speaking, um, you have to sojourn forward or whatever, because love, God, whatever, it's not going to be found in this place. Um, and so like he rejects this city, rejects his occupancy there, because like it doesn't matter whether the revolution happens or not, whether it whether they overthrow the big brother figure, or whether he continues ruling with an iron fist or whatever. Like that outcome actually doesn't matter with what I'm trying to say in this song. It's the fact that like this is an issue to begin with, may be, like maybe this city, this earth isn't the home that it's supposed to be. I mean, the Bible, New Testament says that clearly, that this world isn't ultimately our home. And I don't think like a complete escapism is healthy, of just, well, it's all about when I have my mansion up in the clouds, and you know like we are to make this world a better place. We are here, some would say, New Jerusalem is on a new earth, and that may actually imply that this earth that we know now actually never gets destroyed. It just becomes refined, and that us as humans may always have ties with this world, this earth, so to speak. Um, that instead of us going to heaven, bringing earth to heaven, no, heaven actually comes to earth. Why would God use it as his footstool? Um, I mean, that's one theory. I kind of lean in that direction, but you know, whatever. I'm not like interested in being a scholar of the book of Revelation, to tell you the truth. Um, I'm just saying that, you know, social justice and all, of course it matters, duh. But at the same time, it's recognizing that, hey, there is a big brother in this world. Um, Justice doesn't always come about the way we think it should. And maybe we have to look um, to something else. Instead of maybe instead of trying to be a savior, you just have to learn to kind of walk away from all that stuff and follow God wherever that may lead.